Hey everybody, hope you're having a great morning, great afternoon, great day. I wanted to take some time to read some more of the Joyce Bova, Don't Ask Forever, My Love Affair with Elvis. Went to the rodeo last night, had a good time with my wife. We had some dinner beforehand. We watched the Reba McEntire show afterwards in Nashville. And yeah, so anyhow, and I got another phone call on the way down there from Bridget Cruz, and we talked for about 30 minutes. Once again, I reserve any judgment on Bridget's part. She still likes Priscilla. Her experience and our experience is different. She respects Elvis. She's not a super Elvis fan, but she respects Elvis and his legacy and what he did. Sometimes when you help somebody that is intrinsically probably not a good person, that's my feeling on Priscilla, you get burned. And she got burned, and she's still getting burned, and I do feel bad for her. But there's a lot of drama going on in the different Elvis channels, and she offered for me to put together a group of me, Shauna, and Louie, and Rhonda, I think, to do one video with her to answer all the questions. I just don't know whether I want to get necessarily involved in all the drama. There's a lot of infighting with Elvis channels, and I've always stayed away from it. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault that's out there. I frequently see y'all message about how you're so glad that this channel is pretty much drama free. We try to stay out of it. Can't avoid it forever, obviously. I remember Billy Stanley said, "Hey Joe, you're getting big, and when you get big, people come for you." And immediately after that, we had the little dust up with the Billy Smith channel, Elvis Fans Matter, and I didn't even do anything, but I had to answer it. I guess I did say that it was a bit insensitive that Joe Smith had said what she said about Desiree, without really knowing the situation. But regardless, I feel bad for Bridget as a human, as a parent, and that's really where I stand on it. We don't have to agree about Priscilla, her and I. We don't. I think everybody can have their opinions, okay? And there's a lot of y'all that won't agree with me on Joyce, and I don't really have an opinion yet, but we're going to differ here and there, and that's fine. I wish the world could be a little bit more like that. So here we go. We're going to continue on. We're on page 16 of this book. If any of y'all happen to know Joyce or communicate with her, I'd love to have her on the channel at some point to talk about some of the sections of the book, and I will reach out to her as well at your suggestions that I do. All right, here we go. It took only a few seconds for... and this was where I left off. We left off where it says, "Paul Anka, remember? We promised to meet him in the lounge." "Well, I'm going to." "Well, couldn't you just wait with me a little longer?" said Joyce to her friend. I had to raise my voice even louder above the screaming, whistling fans. "Please come back with me for even a few minutes." Beneath her head of light curls, Anne-Marie's small, pretty features, which was Joyce's friend, twisted into a thoughtful frown. "All right," she nodded, "but just for a few minutes." This is where we stopped after this. It only took seconds for his eyes to search the room and find me. What do you think of the show, baby? Under the circumstances, a natural enough question. But somehow, coming from the show himself, it threw me for a loop. As I hesitated and gulped in response, he impulsively reached out and took my hand. There was an intensity to that grip, and I thought, wow, he cares what I think, or at least what people think, and he really wants to know. "Well," I stalled, "you've really put me on the spot. I don't know what to say except that you were wonderful, incredible, fantastic, and, in a word, magnificent." He let go of my hand and gave me that curled up little grin. He turned delightfully to his boys and shook his head in mock concern. "I don't know how Joyce and I are ever going to be friends, unless she learns to show some enthusiasm." He drew the usual big laugh, and I laughed along with him. "I'm just glad you weren't expecting some high-powered critical analysis," I said. "All the critical analysis in the world never beat one word, truly failed, spoken from the heart," said Elvis. Well, I responded, I truly never felt anything so exciting. Never imagined until I actually was there that anyone, even you, could project that much energy. Positive energy. He smiled, put his arm around me, and patted my shoulder. I looked up at him and I said quietly, I was just truly moved. He smiled, took my hand in his once again, as if he was in need then to take us out. Hold on, let me read this again. He smiled and took my hand in his once again. It was if, oh my goodness, I'm having problems here, Mike. I do know how to read. It was if, it was as if, there we go, I got out. I'm going to do this one more time, okay? Just so we don't miss a meaning here. He smiled and took my hand in his once again. It was as if he felt a need then to take us out of what for him must have been an all too familiar routine. Star beaming modestly, while female fan gushes all over him. He indicated the record playing on the stereo and said that he liked Dusty Springfield very much. I try to shy away from hearing just my own music. You know, you got to listen to what the other guys are doing. The energy that you put out there on the stage, I blurted out, my thoughts reverting back to his performance. I don't see how you can withstand such a pace. He grinned at me. He said, clean living, darling. Clean living and down-home cooking. Although, if the truth were told, I sweat out about 7 pounds a night. He put his arm around me once again and walked me over to his empty chair. Just then, 2 expensively dressed men and women came into the room, and Elvis excused himself and went over to them. I heard him respond to one of the men's introductions with the same old-fashioned good manners he had just shown me. Left to my own devices, it was suddenly brought home to me that I didn't really know anyone else there. Joyce? Except, of course, for Anne-Marie, who had made a beeline for me the second she saw Elvis excuse herself. Joyce, I really have to go soon. I know. I mean, we really should go. I know. Well, let's go then, okay? Come on, Anne-Marie. What kind of friend are you? Elvis is talking to Joyce, and you are trying to pull her out of there to go hang out with Paul Anka, little Paul Anka. And I say that because Paul's probably, I don't know, 5'6" or something like that, 5'5". At least that's the way he looks next to Elvis. I shook my head. I was torn. I didn't want to just hang out. One more starstruck girl trying to eke some reality out of her fantasies, but he had put me in his booth, and it was his idea that I come backstage after the show, and he'd even remembered my name. Damn it, I had to stop kidding myself. There are other things that just don't happen in real life. But still, I couldn't quite bring myself to say the words that would take me out of that room and out of his life. Joyce? Just a few more minutes, please. I looked over at Elvis, said Joyce. As if he'd received my silent message, he glanced up and made a little comic pantomime of peering at me through the wall of well-wishers surrounding him. So he was like, I guess he was doing this, he was like, at Joyce. If you can picture that. At her. All right. Anne-Marie saw it too. More has happened to you than you ever could have expected, Joyce. He has a truly disarming way of dealing with us earthlings, she added pointedly. But you would be better off leaving right now. Can't have the pretty girls going thirsty. I turned around and there was Charlie Hodge holding 2 glasses out for us. I gave a, well, what can you do, shrug at Anne-Marie and her impatient frown. I took the glass from Charlie and found a chair for myself. As soon as I spotted Elvis heading straight for me. Nodding politely to the people vying for his attention, not being rude, but not stopping either. Not until he got to me. Looked like you were ready to take off on me, Joyce, he said, that curled lip grin spreading across his handsome face. A face that would probably be described as sculpted if he were a hero in a gothic romance. Well, to tell you the truth, I began honestly, and was almost immediately interrupted by the appearance of an elderly lady being escorted into Elvis's presence by some of his entourage. She was one of those Elvis mega fans, and I saw her in her unheralded arrival the excuse that I needed to bow gracefully of the scene. For she carried countless albums and full to bursting scrapbooks, and with her strung together bundles of memorabilia, she resembled nothing so much as the kind of archival bag lady. Elvis showed an immediate fascination for her wares, and I started to get up so he could have my seat, only to have him take hold of my arm. Hold over there, darling. You never know, you might find some of this ancient history from before you were born kind of interesting, he said, gesturing for another chair. A pretty irresistible combination: flattery about my age, insistence on my company, and self-deprecatory humor. I sat back down to enjoy a nostalgic feast of pictures, wire photos, articles, and clippings. Now, the items the lady produced from her grab bag went way back, like back to the days when Elvis had his initial success with his first record, the now legendary "Well, That's All Right, Mama, Well, That's All Right for You," a song he'd recorded with two local boys, Scotty Moore and Bill Black, thumping on the bass. Well, that's all right, Mama. That's all right for you. You can hear it right there. Just any way you do, that's all right. That's such a good song. A yellowed clipping said that he had sold 30,000 copies and brought Elvis so much fame he was interviewed on a local radio station. Another article related the forming of the Blue Moon Boys with the addition of drummer DJ Fontana, and told how the four young musicians were appearing in places where country and western stars from the time like Eddie Arnold and Hank Snow also played. And then Elvis was delighted to see there was a little piece about his second successful release entitled "Well, I heard the news, there's good rockin' tonight." That's a good song. That's too high for me. Well, I heard the news, there's good rockin' tonight. Yeah, something like that. Man, I can't sing right now. Too much singing at the Reba McEntire concert. Me on the bone and behind the bar. I never sing that song. Well, I heard the news. As a singer, it hurts my soul when I sing something and it sucks. I gotta admit, that sucked right there. Okay, he also laughed good-naturedly at the expense of the self-appointed guardians of the nation's morality, who had tried so hard to crucify him back then for what they considered his immoral music. But I think he got the biggest kick out of a piece from some show business columnist of a few years later proclaiming that a new singer was taking the country by storm and would soon surpass Elvis Presley. The columnist went on to say that it would be a good and healthy sign for our country's teenagers when the gyrating Mr. Presley is replaced as their idol by the clean-cut, well-groomed, and decently mannered Fabian. Elvis shook his head ruefully. That was then, and this is still now, about the most stupid thing a so-called responsible commentator could make up to say about two dudes who were basically just entertainers. But they always try to lay up the bad vibes against my music. There was a chorus of assent from the others, and I realized for the first time that they had all more or less been deferring to my position with Elvis. They were not the sort to be unaware that Elvis Presley had zeroed in on me, as if the rest of the room full of people did not exist. He was still shaking his head over the clipping, and he said, honey, what do you think of that? That the way you felt back then about me and Fabian? No way, I leaped loyally to the bait. My friends and I never thought that for a second. My response set him off, and it dawned on me that unquestioning devotion wasn't just something that stroked his ego. He mainlined it. Boy, I was a saint compared to what they have today, he went on. I was never vulgar. Did you listen to the words in some of those Rolling Stone songs? And that, what's his name, David Bowie? He's some kind of weirdo, man. An old photograph of himself from around the time he went into the army caught his eye and he singled it out. Well, man, look at that baby fat on me. This observation inspired the scrapbook lady to lean her bland dumpling dough face close to mine. That was just before you met him in Germany, Priscilla dear, she cooed, her eyes glittering with excitement. I felt my face flush. Before I could reply, Elvis, with that easy grace that came so naturally to him, said simply, no, this is my friend, Joyce, not Priscilla. The scrapbook lady nodded and leaned up her treasured relics. Gathering up her treasure. Boy, I'm having trouble this morning. Gathering up her treasured relics, paid me a parting compliment and said, "You are a beautiful girl, Priscilla." Oh, Elvis just squeezed my hand and smiled at me, a warm, reassuring smile that let me know that it was okay, that he knew that I wasn't Priscilla. Actually, if the truth be told, I was feeling pretty self-assured and sophisticated at that moment. I had kept my cool while the superstar of the epoch treated me like someone who mattered to him, referring easily and naturally and spontaneously to me as my friend Joyce. I realized I run the risk here of sounding like a celebrity rag, calling for the canonization of a star for simply behaving like a normal, decent human being. But Elvis's behavior really wasn't an act. I'm used to that from congressmen. He was as down to earth, as genuine as I'd always imagined he would be. Now, I'd been an Elvis generation kid, no doubt about it. Still in grammar school at St. Agnes during those years that scrapbook lady chronicled so faithfully, when he first blazed out of Memphis, Tennessee and tore across the American scene like a meteor. The white boy who had the Negro sound and the Negro feel, Sam Phillips, who owned Sun Records, had called him. The first singer to mix the black and white sound. And I had grown up in the Baltimore area that had been the first southern city to mix black and white kids in its schools. Elvis's hand, a ring glittering on each of the long, strong fingers, shook me gently out of my trance. I jumped up asking, "Did my friend leave?" Elvis nodded. But we've hardly talked. I want to know more about you," he said. I sat back down then. "Well, what would you like to know?" Many things. Well, tell you the truth, I'd rather you did the talking," I said, "especially about your life and everything." Well, we'll get to know everything and each other, darling. But there's one thing I'd like to know right now. You are Italian, aren't you? Sicilian, both sides. I knew it. I could tell. You see, I can tell a lot of things. I have a kind of power to see things. I don't mean just like things like that. It's actually kind of a sixth sense. You know what I mean? He actually did appear to be serious, so I refrained from pointing out that given my dark hair and complexion, you didn't have to be clairvoyant to guess my ancestry. Let's see, he continued. I can see you have a European quality, a womanly quality about you, but you're a sweet girl too. I can tell. I know it's a rare thing, and I bet you're quite unique, Joyce. Sure, I was tempted to say, I'm so unique that the lady mistook me for Priscilla, your wife. Instead, I just replied, actually, there are two of me, if you want to know. Of course, she smiled. All of us have two natures, especially if it... No, I interrupted. I mean literally, physically. I smiled back. You see, I have an identical twin sister. He stared at me. Then I remembered Elvis was a twin himself. He had been a star for so long that certain autobiographical details were no longer fresh in my mind. Yeah, my little brother, Jesse Guerin, died when I was born. You know, they say the twin who survives lives on carrying the qualities of both. One of the one who died as well. At first I thought I'd upset him, but as he went on, it seemed that he drew comfort from my revelation, as though it created kind of a sort of bond between us. Do you miss her a lot? I mean, like when you're away from her, like tonight. To tell you the truth, I replied, all through this entire evening, I kept thinking how much I wished that she were here to share this incredible moment with me. Actually, she was supposed to come to Vegas with me. But of course, I know that she knows how happy I am. How do you mean? He said. Well, it's hard to explain exactly, but Janice and I have always had this capacity to feel the other's emotions, no matter how many miles separate us from each other, especially whenever one of us is feeling extreme sadness or joy. Now, that could be a little embarrassing, if you know what I mean. Sorry, I had to go there. I mean, I hope Janice didn't feel the extreme joy at some point in time later on in this relationship. That would be very awkward. She'd be sitting there at dinner trying to drink a glass of wine, and all of a sudden, ooh. Anyways, okay. I went too far already right there. To wrap this up, he looked at me without saying anything for what seemed like a long time. In reality, however, it was probably no more than a few moments until he spoke. He said, Joyce, would you come up to the suite later and have dinner with me? Now, this was definitely messing with my mind. Part of me was dying to accept, of course. I mean, let's be serious about this. Dinner with Elvis? Not too many events on the old social calendar can match that. Unfortunately, the rest of me was turning out to have cold feet. Things were happening too fast. I'm sorry, I said. I felt extremely vulnerable and a little like a child who had bitten off more than she could chew and now has to spit it out on the table in front of everybody. But Anne Marie and I promised to meet some people after the show. Really? No, you didn't. You don't sound like you mean it. I really don't think I can. It's just some guy, I can tell. Some guy you just met while you and I spent all this time talking and getting to know each other. Why don't you just try telling me the truth? His blue eyes were suddenly piercing. Of course, the truth was that I was afraid. Because he was Elvis Presley and I was just plain scared. Having dinner with a man you just met in his hotel room is a rough enough choice under any circumstance. But when the man is Elvis Presley... Now, I know what y'all are saying out there. You're like, come on, crazy. Like, I would have done it in a heartbeat. Wouldn't have thought about it. That's what you're thinking, right? Most of y'all? Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you have had the same reaction? This was not just taking on a man. This was jumping into a vortex of a whirlwind. However, I was not about to tell him that, and when I didn't make any attempt to answer his question, he put his arm around my shoulder and gently but firmly took me out of the general commotion and into a corner together. He tilted my chin up to face him and said, this time, GD, I expect you to tell me the truth. We've been nothing but truthful, you and I, all night, like up until now. All right, I said. You're probably going to regard this as very unsophisticated reasoning for 1969, for being in Vegas, for being who you are in the show business, and whatever you said, you want the truth. Well, the truth is that I would love to have dinner with you very much, but I just can't help feeling that you would probably pick out a different girl to be with each night, and that this night, it just happens to be me, and that's not what I want. I adore you, but no thank you. I waited, almost afraid of what he might say to my honesty. This is what Elvis said to start out the very next reading of this book. Okay? It's, I know, I'm being that kind of guy. But I've got a lot of stuff that's on my plate today, and I didn't even really I don't have time. I've got time. I have time for y'all, but some days are busier than ever, but I'm really trying not to skip any days of reading or doing something for y'all to talk about Elvis. And to answer your comments and read these books and keep these books going. If I get a chance later on, I'm going to read more of, which one more? Elvis and Jim. Okay, it's been a couple of days since I read that, and y'all been asking me. So I won't be able to do 45 minutes of books, but maybe I can do 20, 25 of a couple books for you today. All right, TCB, TLC. Till next time, this is Joe Sins, Rare Elvis Photos. I think I'm going to convert another channel to just Joe Sins, and when I do get time later on, have some other interviews with people. Maybe read some of Darren Matera's other books that are not Elvis related. maybe read some other books, maybe bring some other guests on from the different industries that are out there. I don't know, just a thought. So keep in mind that maybe I will start doing that a month or so from now, or maybe even sooner. But my focus is you, as it always is. TCB, TLC. Till next time.